Francisco Lindor has been named a finalist to win a Gold Glove for the 2021 season. On today's episode of Locked On Mets, I'm going to talk about his chances to win the award and also put his greatness defensively into context when it comes to franchise history.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Now, last week we learned that Francisco Lindor is a finalist to win a Gold Glove. On today's show in the first segment, I'll talk about the other finalists, go through the numbers on why Lindor should win the Gold Glove this year. Then in the second segment, what I want to do is I want to put his greatness defensively into context of Mets history. Who are the other Mets who have won Gold Gloves? Could Lindor finish his career as the best defensive player in Mets history? I'll talk about who has that title now and what it'll take for Lindor to pass that player. Then in the last segment, I want to just look at where Lindor stacks up when it comes to Mets great shortstops. Who is ahead of him and what will it take for him to ultimately go down as the best shortstop in franchise history? Before we get to any of that, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing about the Mets and about baseball at justbaseball.com. All right, so I talk about outs above average a lot on this podcast when we're going through different players and trying to grade out what they brought to the Mets defensively. But since this is a podcast that I solely focus on Francisco Lindor's defense, I wanted to just read exactly what outs above average is so you have a better understanding. Here's what it says. Outs above average is the cumulative effect of all individual plays a fielder has been credited or debited with, making it a range-based metric of fielding skill that accounts for the number of plays made and the difficulty of those plays. If there is a play that had a 25% out probability and Lindor made that play, he'll be credited with plus 0.75. If he were not to make that play, he'd be subtracted minus 0.25. If there's a play that's routine and their probability is 99% and you don't make that play, that's going to be a big deduction. It'd be minus 0.99. If you made the play, you're only going to get plus 0.01. I mean, that's how this works. So it is a metric that really credits the player for making the elite plays, and it debits them greatly if you don't make the routine plays. That's why, in my opinion, it's the best metric as opposed to defensive runs saved and ultimate zone rating that just don't account for as much as outs above average. And when you look at that metric, outs above average, Francisco Lindor, arguably a top 2 defender in baseball. Nick Ahmed, since 2016, is the only player in baseball who has been credited with more outs above average than Francisco Lindor. And this year, Lindor was second on the list to Nicky Lopez of the Kansas City Royals, who is a huge Gold Glove snub, by the way, wasn't even a finalist in the American League, despite having 25 outs above average. So, in my opinion, a big mistake there by the voters. But when it comes to Lindor, he's a finalist. And when it comes to the National League, he led all fielders, not just shortstops, with those 20 outs above average. When it comes to runs prevented, Lindor was at 15, the second best mark in baseball behind Nicky Lopez. Again, big snub there. Here's where this gets interesting because the other finalists that you have, it's Kevin Newman of the Pirates and Brandon Crawford. Brandon Crawford has won Gold Gloves before, had a great resurgent season with the Giants. He was worth 6 defensive runs saved this year. Kevin Newman, 9 defensive runs saved. Now, Kevin Newman, if you go to Fangraphs defensive metrics, if that is what the voters are going based on, defensive runs saved, ultimate zone rating, DEF, all these different Fangraphs-based metrics, he is going to win the award. He is the best across the board in all these different stats. And if that's what the voters are going towards, that they're not looking at outs above average, Kevin Newman might win. If they're going based on pedigree and resume and what a player has done in the National League in particular, it'd be Brandon Crawford. But Kevin Newman, when it comes to outs above average, it's only three outs above average, 2 runs prevented, compared to Lindor, like I said, 20 outs above average and 15 runs prevented. At the end of the day, when it comes to analyzing a player defensively, a lot of times you just have to go to your eye test and you have to basically see if the eye test confirms what the numbers are telling you. All these guys are great defensive shortstops. To me, Francisco Lindor takes things to another level. He is the type of defensive shortstop that you just don't see often, and he is the type that should be in the running to win a Gold Glove every single year. And the reason why I look at all these defensive metrics and I say, why did Lindor not do as well in some of the Fangraphs based metrics, but for outs above average, he is atop all of these lists? Well, here's the thing: outs above average takes into account not only the positioning of the player, but also the speed of the runner, the velocity of the batted ball, and the distance between the player and the ball. So, what that tells me is with outs above average, you're getting the best measurement of what's a difficult play. A ground ball that's hit right at you, to make that play on Trey Turner, it's a lot more impressive than on Yan Gomes, right? Because they're different runners, different speeds. You really have to be on your horse as soon as you get that ball and firing to get a Trey Turner out. But if it's a catcher running down the line, you can take your time. And when it comes to the difference between outs above average and some of these other metrics, taking that positioning into account is very important to note, because Francisco Lindor, his ultimate zone rating might not be as high as some of these other players, because the Mets so often shift this year that if he was technically playing the second base position based on where he was standing at the start of the play, that is just thrown out for ultimate zone rating. They don't even look at it, because he's a shortstop playing essentially second base at the start of the play. Whereas outs above average, we'll just grade him as a second baseman for that play, and it will take all those different things into account. That's why for Lindor, he was worth 16 outs above average when he was in the shortstop position, 4 outs above average when he was in the second base position. And that is basically just judging off the shifts and how these players can thrive in the shifts. And it obviously is something that needs to be accounted for when you're looking at how baseball is played nowadays, because shifting is only going to become more prevalent unless Major League Baseball decides, for pace of play or for whatever other reasons, to outlaw shifting or modify shifting to try to bring some more action back into the game. That's the only way that shifting is going anywhere. And with that, you need to identify the players that can thrive defending in the shift. And Lindor certainly did that this year. So if you look at all of these guys in their different cases, as I said, Kevin Newman, if you're going based on the Fangraph statistics, and I know they are popularized, so there is a good chance that a lot of writers went to Fangraphs, went to the top of the defensive run save list, saw Kevin Newman, and just penciled his name in. Kevin Newman led in defensive run save. He's going to be the Gold Glove winner. If there is those different writers, whoever voted on this award, that looked at Baseball Savant and checked the outs above average, it would be obvious that Francisco Lindor would win this award. But what concerns me is you would say the exact same thing for Nicky Lopez in the American League, and he was not even a finalist. And so that, to me, could point towards voters maybe going in another direction, and Lindor could get snubbed here. The one thing that he has on his side is the name recognition. Everyone knows Francisco Lindor is an elite defensive shortstop, has won Gold Gloves before. This would be his first in the National League. And I think there's enough narrative built in there that it should help sway some voters and maybe put some more people on his side. But if Francisco Lindor were to win a Gold Glove, he would be the first Mets shortstop to do so since Ray Ordonez, and the first Mets player to win a Gold Glove since Juan Lagares. So I want to talk about the history of Gold Glove winners with the Mets in just a minute. BetOnline is back and better than ever, now featuring a new web interface for the start of the basketball season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile site to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit just by using the promo code Locked On. From basketball, football, baseball, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage. of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet online, where the game starts. So throughout franchise history, the Mets have only had two shortstops that have won Gold Gloves, Ray Ordonez and Bud Harrelson. Harrelson was the first in 1971. He was the second Met to ever win a Gold Glove, as Tommy Agee won one the year prior. The Mets overall, not the longest line of history when it comes to Gold Glove winners. And we're going to go through all that right now. You had Doug Flynn, 1980, won one at second base. Keith Hernandez, of course, greatest defensive player in Mets history, won Gold Gloves from 1983 through 1988, six straight in his first 6 years with the Mets. Ron Darling, 1989, won a Gold Glove. And then it was not until Ordonez in 1997, his first of three straight. And then from there, you had another gap until Carlos Beltran came into the picture. He won in 2006 through 2008, did not win a Gold Glove in his first year with the Mets in 2005. David Wright, also a Gold Glove winner in 2007 and 2008. Jose Reyes never won a Gold Glove. For those who might remember him as a great defensive shortstop, he had his moments, but he also made a ton of errors and was not the complete polished shortstop that Francisco Lindor has displayed to us in his first season with the Mets. The last Gold Glove winner, Juan Lagares, in 2014. So if Francisco Lindor were to win a Gold Glove this season, he would be number 10, the 10th Met to ever win a Gold Glove. That is a little bit surprising that there's only been 10 across the history that dates back to the 1960s, but that just shows you this franchise that has always been built on great pitching has not always backed up that pitching with great defense. Keith Hernandez was obviously the best defensive player in franchise history with those 6 Gold Gloves. Ray Ordonez, maybe number 2, honestly, winning 3 at shortstop. Beltran with the 3 in center field. That's basically your top 3 right now. If you're going to make a Mount Rushmore, I don't know. Do you throw David Wright in there for the 2 Gold Gloves? I guess maybe. I mean, there's really no other prime candidate to put into that list. So maybe it is David Wright for now. But it shows you the open pathway that Francisco Lindor can cross through here and can really establish himself in a way that few others have. If he were to go out and win 7 Gold Gloves in his next decade with the Mets, greatest defensive player in franchise history, let's just say he wins 5 at the shortstop position, a premium spot. And let's say the Mets win a couple of World Series during that span, he'll be right there with Keith Hernandez. So it is really interesting to look back at Mets history and just notice that it really has not happened often that they've had great defensive players and then pair that with great defensive players that are also great offensively. Carlos Beltran, David Wright, Keith Hernandez, 3 of my just scrapped together Mount Rushmore I just made, all good offensive players. Ray Ordonez, complete opposite of that, right? Ray Ordonez certainly was not a good offensive shortstop. He was only there for his gloves. So if Lindor can put it all together, it would put him in pretty rare company in Mets history to be able to do it all. And I think what fans were frustrated with this year was everything is always going to be predicated on the bat. It's always going to be predicated on the batting average, the home runs, all that stuff that the fans who've been rooting for this team for decades are always going to look towards first. And when you're not doing them, you're going to look past a great defensive shortstop. But when I think about the Mets season, when things were going well, it was the defense up the middle. That was what was propelling them to so much success. And I know it's not sexy to talk about defense, and all you care about is the guy that steps up into the box and hits the 3-run homer. You know, Wilmer Flores was a great Mets shortstop for a small window there when he was hitting, because that's all it really mattered about. Can you hit? Asdrubal Cabrera comes to the Mets, mid-30s, certainly past his prime as a shortstop, but he gave you offensive production at that position, and that is what fans care about. So Lindor, to get that love and to get that acclaim, he can't just be Ray Ordonez, right? He can't just go out, win Gold Gloves every year and collect his $341 million and think people aren't going to have a problem with it. But what I want to tell you is you need to focus on the defense with Francisco Lindor. I'm not saying that the offense isn't important. It is. He has to be better than he was. But When the Mets got Francisco Lindor, his weighted runs created plus was 117, I believe, for his career. So this was not a player that was predicated solely on his offense, not somebody that was just going to carry you offensively. What you were getting him for was the fact that he could be an above average offensive player from the shortstop position while being the best shortstop in baseball. And I think when you watch the playoffs and you watch how tight these games are, it's so important to have that defensive shortstop like a Carlos Correa right now at the Astros, even like Dansby Swanson with the Braves, who can make all of the plays. And when you're in those tight games and there is a speedy guy running down the line and the ball's hit in and the shortstop's got to run in and make a play, they're going to get that out because that out can be the difference between winning and losing the game. So I think Francisco Lindor did a lot better for the Mets this season because of that elite defense than fans give him credit for. I know that until he hits the 30 home runs, he might not ever be widely beloved, but you do have to take a minute to appreciate what he's bringing you defensively because when it comes to Met shortstops, it's a rarity to have someone this good. And that's what I want to talk about in just a minute here. We're going to go through the other shortstops in Mets history and see how Lindor stacks up to some of the other players that have played this premium position. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching your sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the other good stuff you're missing? Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before. So you can watch your favorite sports movies and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion. Get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. So if you look at all the different positions when it comes to the New York Mets and franchise history, shortstop traditionally has been one of the weaker ones. Bud Harrelson was the first great two-time All-Star, won a Gold Glove, one of the pioneers of the New York Mets, part of the 1969 team. From there, though, a pretty big drop-off for years. You had Frank Tavares had a nice little run. Ron Gardenhire, of course, the eventual Twins manager at one point, he was the Mets shortstop for a year. Jose Acundo. And then you have Rafael Santana. I feel like I need to spend a little time here talking about Santana because he is the most forgotten member of the 1986 Mets. You would forget that he was even there. If you go through, I mean, that 30 for 30 doc, did they ever mention Santana once? I've read books about the 1986 Mets that never talk about Santana. If you put 15 baseball cards without the names in front of me and you just ask me to pick out which one is Rafael Santana, I couldn't tell you. So interesting that this was actually one of the better shortstops in Mets history. Kind of a low bar, but he was a starter for years there. So interesting that he never gets talked about, but I guess he's just kind of forgettable. He was like a replacement level player on both ends, nothing too special. Kevin Elster had a run there, Jose Vizcaíno, and then eventually you get to Ray Ordonez, one of the best shortstops in Mets history defensively, the best shortstop in Mets history. A 7-year run. His OPS with the Mets in those 7 seasons was 594. Now, OPS is on base plus slugging. The guy was a non-factor offensively. It was all about the glove with Ordonez. That's why he started for so many years. But again, you're talking about a two-way contributor. You can make the argument that Bud Harrelson, all the way through to the 2000s, was the only one that was a real threat both ways. And even at times, he was predicated on the glove. But you go through, and Jose Reyes is obviously the best shortstop in Mets history. I don't think there's any question about it. Was he elite defensively? No. But when he was playing next to right, the two of them fielded that side of the infield very well. He had his moments. He was flashy as all hell at shortstop for sure. Flashy all over the bases. Was a great offensive player. Obviously, with Jose Reyes, you're in this weird point nowadays where it's hard to just openly celebrate Jose because of the domestic violence. You always have to put a caveat to it. You don't want to just give him his flowers and pretend like nothing happened. But, growing up as a kid, when I was, in the early 2000s, obviously Jose Reyes was the most electric player I'd ever seen. And He had a great run with the Mets. Left in free agency, came back. If it wasn't for all the other reasons, that homecoming would have just been nothing but sweet to see him finish his career at the Mets. There's always that weird part of you that's like, do you root for him? Do you not root for him? But if you're just looking at the numbers and the production, Jose Reyes, obviously the best shortstop in franchise history. That's the bar that Lindor is going to be trying to cross over in his next decade with the Mets. And I think he's got a good enough shot to do it. Jose never won a gold glove, only was an all-star, was it 4 times? So that's something that Lindor can certainly meet if he plays up to his potential and what you would expect of him. So we'll see if he can cross that. But if you look at what the shortstop position looked like post Jose Reyes up until Lindor, I mean, really shaky, right? You had Ruben Tejada, 2012 through 2015. Omar Cantanilla had a little tiny run. Wilmer Flores, just bat only shortstop, no glove. As Drupal Cabrera, sneakily like the best shortstop the Mets had after Jose Reyes. I mean, his season in 2016, he was very good. When you looked at him compared to Wilmer Flores, there was a real difference in the fact that he was, at least at one point, a good defensive shortstop. So he didn't have the range, but he was still an intelligent fielder. He still made all the plays that were hit to him, and he had a really good offensive season in 2016. So in a weird way, is Dribble Cabrera one of the best shortstops in Mets franchise history because of how bad the position has been. From there, eventually, Reyes came back, got a little run, but more at third base than short. And it was Ahmed Rosario's position, right? He was a top prospect. At one point, I believe he was as high as number 2 in all of baseball by Baseball America. He was supposed to be the guy. And ultimately, he'll be remembered for being the guy that helped get the guy because he was part of that trade to get Francisco Lindor. Rosario had his moments. He certainly got a lot better defensively from the second half of 2019 on. He was pretty abysmal in the first half of that season. We're always talking about when will Rosario be moved out to center field. At the end of the day, he ends up being part of the trade along with Andres Jimenez to get Francisco Lindor. And now it is up to Lindor to cement that place for himself in Mets lore. And it really is a wide open pathway to be the greatest shortstop in franchise history. Again, it's not the toughest bar to climb. You're not asking him to be the next Derek Jeter. You're asking him to be better than Jose Reyes was. And Reyes' run with the Mets was spectacular offensively. But if Lindor can win 4 or 5 gold gloves and 2 or 3 silver sluggers and can be an all-star 5 times in his Mets career, you might look up at the end and say, yeah, of course, that was the best shortstop in franchise history. So for Lindor as the new leader of the Mets, as the new face of the Mets, he's got to be better offensively. He's got to keep doing what he does with the glove each and every year, always being in that gold glove conversation. And really, he's got to help this team win because at the end of the day, the greatest separator is winning a World Series. If you are a World Series winning shortstop for the New York Mets, like Bud Harrelson was, that's going to put you in a very small class and a very special class, especially if you are one of the driving forces in getting that World Series, or at least getting to that World Series and winning that World Series. And Lindor has an opportunity to do that in 2022 and beyond. We'll be talking about it throughout the offseason. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Sully has you covered for everything going on with the World Series. Make sure you follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.